wrote 2 books, okay? I published these back in 2017. I published this back in October 21st, 2017. Blood Sacrifice by Joseph Magellan and Serial Killer's Son by Joseph Magellan. 600 pages of this is what it's like growing up in a house full of serial killers. My stepbrother Leo, the man I call Leo in my books. And by the way, this book, Blood Sacrifice, is going to be free for a week. So please pick it up. Write me a great review because Amazon deleted all my reviews. I first published it under a different title. I published it as Sacrifice of the Serial Killer Scapegoat Chronicles and Sacrifice of the Serial Killer Quest of the Scapegoat. And when I changed the title and the cover, they deleted all my reviews. So here's the deal. My stepbrother Leo is the most prolific active serial murderer, kidnapper, rapist, and child molester in United States history right now. Before that, my father held the record. Okay, my father's dead. He died in 2000. I've been going hard at the police for a really long time. I published these books in 2017. So from 2016, and it's 2019, I've been going hard at the police. 3 weeks ago, I met with the FBI here in my town. I've been talking to the FBI round and round and round. I've been talking to agents in Martinsburg, West Virginia for months. Okay, there's 8 locations that I've identified where there are as many as, there are hundreds of bodies there. There's as many as 500 people buried at 8 locations in 4 states. The most prolific serial murderer in human history is Luis Garavito from, I think, from Colombia. He ranks in at 138 victims. The highest body count serial killer in the United States is Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. He weighs in at 49 victims. I have personally identified 47 of the people murdered. Just me, okay? I didn't have anything to do with this, and I'm trying to expose them. I've been trying to expose them for 3 years. I've identified 47. Some of those people, my grandfather was murdered in front of me. My grandmother was murdered, okay? And she was trying to smother her, and my grandmother, before she died, she reported the murder of her husband, my grandfather, in every state, in Maryland, Virginia, D.C., Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, Chicago, up in New York City. No one would do anything. No one would do anything. And then they killed her. Okay? And the 5 properties where most of these bodies are buried, they're all in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. And they were all owned by my grandmother and grandfather, and they're all stolen from my grandmother and grandfather. So why am I coming forward to you now? Because my brother, my stepbrother Leo, my brother, how do you know your brother? He's my brother. How do you know what your brother's doing? He's my brother. Why would you suspect your brother? Because he's my brother. Okay, I know what's going on. He's my brother. I know what's going on. Okay, so for 3 years, I had an international media contact, work in this case. He gave up. All the cops in West Virginia wouldn't talk to him. Okay, so Christmas just passed and the holidays. This is the first time in my life, I'm 54 years old, this is the first time in my life that no one from my family sent me an email, sent me a text, called me by phone, no one. Why? Because they've informed Leo, my brother, my stepbrother, that he's being investigated. He's an active duty Fairfax County, Virginia police deputy. I can't tell you how dangerous this is. He can literally snatch anybody. And as long as he doesn't call it in, that person will disappear, or those people will disappear and never be seen again. I've identified 8 locations where there are bodies buried. 5 of those locations are all in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, and that's where the majority of the bodies are. 5 locations in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. The location with the most bodies is the 49 acres. It's the old Whittemeyer homestead. It's located off of 522. You drive from Maryland across 522 through Berkeley Springs. You make a left on Mount Tabor Road. It's Mount Tabor Road and 522. It's directly behind the Mount Tabor Road Baptist Church. Okay, and there's a map. It's 49 acres. There's hundreds of bodies here. And I'm an eyewitness to some of these crimes. I'm an eyewitness to a live burial of a NIST engineer. He was a young man. He retired at 46. I retired at 46. He was a federal employee. He did 25 years. He took the early out. He had plane tickets to Thailand for that week. He was scheduled to do his retirement luncheon. My father shot him a couple of times, stabbed him, brought him to the house, tortured him for several days, rape, broke the bones in his legs, stabbed him, lots of rape. They were rape murderers. He brought his friends in, they raped him. That guy was buried alive in front of me. He was buried 3 times. First he was buried in the creek, then he was buried and he washed out of the creek, then he was buried behind the tractor, and now he's in a 3rd location. I know exactly where that location is. I don't want to tell you because they'll just dig it up. So he worked at NIST in Gaithersburg, Maryland. NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. Okay, which before that was the National Bureau of Standards. My father worked there for 34 years. I worked at NIST. Okay, I'm a federal employee. I worked 25 years. I retired at 46, just like this guy. Okay, there's a cyclist who was snatched from the Montgomery County Fair. He was 6 feet tall, 6 feet tall, brown hair. He was a born-again Christian. He had a vision of angels at night while he was freezing in the car, naked, freezing in the car. He clawed his way through the back seat, and he got the car into neutral, piloted it down our steep driveway, and crashed into 205 Tulip Drive, Gaithersburg, Maryland. My father called his backup. He had a police gang. He had dirty cops in a police gang. Okay, I described this in my book. He called, and who came? Babyface cop, strong cop, and female cop. Okay, there's a body buried at 205 Tulip Drive. This is at 205 Tulip Drive, Gaithersburg, Maryland. There is a Boy Scout buried there. I'm an eyewitness to this. Okay, this kid was in his Boy Scout uniform, getting his merit badges, and my father pretended he had a bad back, and he snatched the kid and he shot him. Little boy, he was exactly my size, exactly my age. He was probably 10 years old. This is when I'm like 10 years old. I'm 54 now. Okay, he shot the kid. The kid goes into a coma, but he doesn't die. My father feels like he won the jackpot. So every day at lunch, he comes home and he rapes this boy multiple times, this unconscious boy, and he leaves his scout uniform. He leaves the top of his scout uniform on because, you know, he likes that. And he's just raping him in the bed. Mr. C across the street at 205 Tulip Drive, where the body was buried for 30 years. I don't know if they dug it up. He comes over multiple times a day. He insists and gets a key. Okay, so he's coming over every day and raping the boy. He invites other people over. I call 911, Montgomery County, Maryland. I call 911 and report this boy. He woke up. He was in a coma for several days, maybe even a whole week. Okay, he was in a coma for at least 3 days, maybe a week. There's 5 people in the room raping this kid. I called 911 and reported it while they're raping him in the other room. Okay, and the kid is bleeding because he's been shot. Okay, and he's bleeding on the bed. And my mother can't, the blood is going through whatever she's putting on the bed. So they take my mattress out of my room and they're raping the kid on my mattress. Are there spiritual ramifications for this? You bet. I've seen everything. Blood dripping from the walls, the dark man standing there scratching in the ceiling. You name it. I've seen everything, which is how I became, very spiritually aware. You can't not be spiritually aware. My parents are red witches, okay? Satanic red witches. And so this kid, this Boy Scout, he calls his mother on the phone, and the media, this is a very famous case. The media came and they flooded the scene, and the cops came. They still got away with it, okay? And before this, they searched for his body, and my father, he volunteered as a good Samaritan to help with the search. Really? Are the police pretending that they don't know about this? Are the police pretending that this is not such a visible incident? Okay, the media was involved. There was a big reward. This is very visible. Okay, there's so many people that I saw buried at the 49 acres. Another place is my father's main address, the 5 acres. There's plus 50 bodies here. Okay, we're already over the most prolific serial murderers in history. Okay, just those 2 locations, we're over the body count for the most prolific serial murderer in history, which is a dude from Colombia. Okay, my father in his later years, he got so sloppy, he would leave bodies out on the ground. He'd throw a little lime on them. And he's like, yeah, I'm too old. I'm too old to dig. The ground is hard. And I got somebody coming on Saturday to dig. He got so sloppy that he was putting the bodies out his back door. Okay, and the property line on the 5 acres in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, ran very close to his back door, and he was accidentally burying bodies on his neighbor's property. And his neighbor said, "Hey, what are you doing digging on my property?" That's how sloppy he was. On what was called the 16 acres, because my father called the 49 acres the 80 acres. Was it 80 acres? No, it's the Whittemire Homestead, Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, right behind the Mount Tabor United Methodist Church. Okay, on the 16 acres, which is not 16 acres, it's one of the Sleepy Creek properties. There are 4 bodies. I'm an eyewitness. My father was building on this property. We were building a cabin. My father, because he's a monster, decided to fell a tree on me. So he was positioning me, stand right there. He was hitting me, beating me, putting a gun at me, stand right there. Then he chopped a tree, a very big tree, and tried to fell it on me. And he was pointing a gun at me, stay right there, stay right there. And I ran at the last moment. It knocked me down. It almost knocked me out. It scratched my whole body and my face. He was laughing. He came and just beat the shit out of me, pointed the gun at me, put the knife to my throat, raped me a little bit. The neighbor, he saw it. Okay, and the only way to stop him is just punch him. Okay, unless you're a Navy SEAL and you've seen 3 tours in combat, you've not seen more combat than me. Okay, I've been in more fights. I've fought more people. And you might notice my bad tooth. I'm going to tell you about this. Because there's a man murdered because of this tooth. And there's 200 witnesses. Like nobody knows. Okay. And I want to explain something to you. I want to explain to you about the mafia, about the real criminals. Okay, if you're a real criminal, because my father he ran a gang. Now Leo, my brother, runs a criminal gang. They run a criminal gang. How does it work? In the old days, before RICO, Racketeering Influence Corrupt Practices Act, before the RICO Act, which is recent, okay, the mobsters would stand right outside on the corner. All the captains would stand right outside, and then the mob boss would come driving up, and it was for everybody to see. Everybody in Brooklyn, everybody, wherever they were, knew the faces and the names of all these people, and all the cops knew, and they stood outside for everyone to see. They didn't hide anything. And so when they shot somebody on the street, when they committed a robbery or a rape, and people saw them, nobody would say anything. They say, "I didn't see anything." Why? Because they know who these people are. That's how my father ran his gang. And I want you to understand, everybody knows. My father shot people and stabbed people and kicked them and set the dog on them right in the front yard. He shot people in the front yard. Mr. B, across the street, he filmed it. This is the time when the VHS cameras, the Betamax cameras were out. He filmed my father shooting and stuffing people in the trunk in the front yard. He called the police a dozen times. What happened? Mr. B and his wife were both arrested for felony sexual assault on me. Did they do it? No. Next door, Mr. R, he was arrested and convicted as a sex offender. For what? For molesting me. Did he do it? Of course he didn't do it. They killed or arrested anybody that had a problem. They did it right out in the open. They didn't hide anything. So I've identified eight locations in 4 states where there are bodies. And I've identified 47 of these victims. What do you need?